Hello, everybody. How you doing? All right, we got four. So, all right, we got people here. So, obviously, you can tell from the title we're going to be talking about episode 1 of Trial by Media. For those of you who are wondering whose face you were looking at there before this video started, that was Jenny Jones, because the first episode is about the Jenny Jones show and an incident that resulted from something that happened on the Jenny Jones show. So I don't know how many of you have yet watched Trial by Media, but I just watched episode 1. How's it going, Jamie? What's up, buddy? But I just watched episode 1, and it's really interesting. It's very, very interesting. At first I was kind of looking at it going, where are they going with this? You know, like what did it, and what it ended up being about was pretty wild. I was, it's tough to watch. She was hot. Hey there, TTM fangirl. So, but see, for me, what was interesting about it was you're watching it, and as you're watching it all play out, the first episode with the Jenny Jones thing is you're kind of like, well, yeah, our First Amendment rights are important, and even trash TV falls under that umbrella. And then, but at the same time, you're like, but wait a second here. The Jenny Jones, many of you probably remember the Jenny Jones thing when that was in the news? It was back in 1995. How many of you, I don't know how many of you might remember that, but back in 1995, I remember hearing about it. I never really looked into it or anything like that, but I remember hearing about the Jenny Jones thing or whatever. I remember Geraldo getting hit in the nose with the chair. I remember that. But anyways. So Jamie watched her show? Yeah. So yeah, so the whole thing is she, okay, so to explain for those of you who may not know, and you'll see this in greater depth when you watch it. It's very interesting. Jenny Jones did a show with the premise of secret lovers revealing their crush on somebody, and that person doesn't know. Okay? Well, what happens is a Mr. Scott Amador brought on, well, see, here's the trick of it, too. It was Scott and then a neighbor that lived with Johnny Schmidt, a neighbor who lived in the same building. And so they were there. And Johnny Schmitz came into the situation knowing nothing. And he sits down, most likely probably thinking that the girl had a crush on him and was about to reveal it. But the whole twist of this show, this Jenny Jones episode, was the fact that it was actually the guy that had brought Johnny there. Scott Amador, who had brought Johnny there. And Scott had the crush on Johnny. Okay? Well, Johnny did not know that. He did not see that coming. It was, yeah. So, because of the Jenny Jones show, that happened. A few days later, hi, Shaz. Let's see. Was pretty much the demise of her show. Well, yeah, she never really wanted to really take any kind of responsibility for it. And so I, as a viewer, would have lost interest in her as well, seeing what happened here, because it's clearly the deceptive tactics that they were using to get, to get compelling television, basically. And they were doing it at Johnny Schmitz's expense, right? Because he knew nothing. He agreed to nothing, So I feel that the Jenny Jones show did have some responsibility in that, personally. But at the same time, it is a sticky thing because of our First Amendment rights. So you can't go trying to rob. If you go trying to rob trash TV of its First Amendment rights, You run into the problem AEDPA ran into. The Supreme Court said, well, it can't just apply to this section of the population. If it's going to apply to them, it's going to apply to everybody. Okay? That's the slippery slope, right? So you can't just take away the First Amendment. So it's a sticky situation, and that's the trouble here. But for me, the bone to pick in this, well, let's just tell more of the story, and I'll get to my bone to pick. They would set up people to be humiliated and stuff. And I mean, and that was what made for good TV, and all that sort of stuff. So, wow. All right. So, about 3 days after the taping of that show, Mr. Schmitz goes over to Mr. Amador's house, and he shoots him twice in the chest and kills him. Now, obviously, Mr. Schmitz committed an act, a violent act, a murderous act. And, I'm not saying he should have gotten off. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been held responsible for his actions. But at the same time, realizing he was going to be humiliated, in his own mind, he had it built up. And it was clear in this episode, judging by the father, who seemed to have on the stand, it was kind of demonstrated that he had a pretty strong homophobia. Okay, so that would be a house that Johnny grew up in, with a dad who was pretty much homophobic. So that would have affected Johnny's thinking. And I mean, I could see very easily and clearly how the thought of that show airing and his dad seeing it and all that, in Johnny Schmitz's mind, his world was going to come crashing down. Doesn't make what he did right. It does not make what he did right. To just be absolutely 100% piercingly clear on that, it doesn't make what he did right. But I feel the tactics used by the Jenny Jones show were a big part of what made that happen. That's just my opinion. But, and so obviously Johnny Schmitz is convicted. Obviously, it's a big media thing. And who's covering the trial of Jimmy Schmitz, right? It's Court TV. Court TV. Really? Okay. That's interesting. So after Johnny Schmitz the murder trial is done and he's been sentenced and that's over with. After that's over with, it then escalates because Scott Amador's brother and family were very, very displeased with everything that had gone on. The way the media had used their loved one's murder as a main event for them to capitalize and make money off of them, and the drama and the everything of their situation, and they ended up not liking that, so they hired their own lawyer, this guy named Mr. Feiger. Yeah, that was his name, Feiger. Now, I will tell you, I have some issues with Mr. Feiger. Mr. Feiger is a vain, pompous, fatuous guy. I mean, he is. He loves a camera, He's like Len Kaczynski, I think, maybe, but a lot more charismatic. And maybe he doesn't creep out his clerks or interns or something, I don't know. But But he's like, he loves the camera in the same way we see that Len Kaczynski does in Making a Murderer. He loves the camera, media, hog, all that. And, you know, and he actually does argue the case that the victim's family raises, and he argues against the Jenny Jones show because they're trying to argue that the Jenny Jones show was, you know, ultimately was responsible because it was a sequence of events that was set in motion on the stages at their show, right? So it gets all argued. Well, they win. The family wins, and they are given this, or well, they're awarded a settlement that I don't believe they ever. I don't think they ever received anything of. But then, 3 years later, Warner Brothers. Yes, I said Warner Brothers. Appeals it. Appeals the decision, right? Here's the interesting thing, folks. Jenny Jones, and this is my serious bone to pick with this episode. Jenny Jones was owned by Warner Brothers. Yes. Guess what else was owned by Warner Brothers? Court TV. Yep, Court TV. Both were owned by Warner Brothers. So let me just put this into perspective for you folks, right? Warner Brothers initiated this whole thing happening on the stages at Jenny Jones' show by bringing in Johnny Schmitz and humiliating him, really, ultimately, the way they did. Causes Johnny Schmitz to kill Scott Amador. That creates a trial, right? Okay. And that trial, Court TV is there to broadcast that, which is also part of Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers is literally making money off of every end of this thing. They're making money off of the original Jenny Jones, right? And now, off of the Court TV, they're making the money off of the trial of Johnny Schmitz. That's where I have a bone to pick in this. Warner Brothers should not have been allowed. If Court TV was the only game in town, then the trial shouldn't have been covered. But if there was another entity that wasn't Warner Brothers that could have covered the trial, then that's what should have happened. I am extremely pissed that Warner Brothers was making money off of both ends of this thing. It's shameful. And that is what the courts should have been trying to figure out how to stop. That is what the lawyers should have been trying to argue to stop. So that an entity like that can't manipulate the whole damn thing and make millions, or make money hand over fist off of people's suffering and grief. I have a serious issue with that. Warner Brothers, that's just not right. Let's meow meow. He was ego driven. Yep, you're right. Yeah, that's the other thing about Johnny. I mean, Johnny. Let's talk about Johnny. I in the show you find out he gets out after 22 years. So I'm actually satisfied that 22 years is enough. That he has learned his lesson, and I bear no ill will towards Johnny, other than never think that shooting somebody is the answer ever again. But other than that, but I honestly think he's a remorseful guy. I think he honestly realizes he made a mistake that day, and he realizes that he was crazy. His mind was. He realizes probably now that he was just crazy that day. And if there had been somebody who would have pulled him aside and caused him to maybe just think about it a little bit longer before he went and did what he did, I mean, he probably wouldn't have done it. But he marched over in the heat of, rage and whatever that he was, the humiliation that he was, anticipating, and all the things that were messing with his head. I don't believe he was in his right mind. I honestly don't. I don't see it as being premeditated. I see it as I just don't see it as a premeditation. Manslaughter, yeah. I mean, so he was ultimately sentenced to 25 to 50 years. He got out after 22. I honestly think he's remorseful. It's like Shaz was pointing out. Right when he did it, he immediately was like, I've totally screwed up. And he immediately went and drove to a phone and told on himself and faced the music for it. So that tells me something about him. That tells me that he knows what he did was wrong. And I honestly believe that he was just in a form of madness with the potential humiliation that he saw coming down the pike. That's my honest assessment and my honest feeling about it. So yeah, Warner Brothers made money off of both trials. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's what the lawyers should have been bringing. In the end, with all of this, they should have been bringing that and taking that to the higher courts, saying, should an entity like this be able to just continue to profit off of a family's misery and pain? You know what I mean? That's honestly that's really what it was. Yeah, a narcissistic person, we all know. I don't actually know Ken, but anyway, I know of him. So, I mean, that's the thing about this. I mean, think about it, folks. We obviously always talk about the press conference. Since you bring up old Sweaty there, TTM fangirl, we always talk about the press conference, right? And what it did. Well, it's interesting to see this where, you know, Warner Brothers basically owned all the rights to cover all of this stuff and went on making money off of it, hand over fist. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Now, and like I said, that's what the things you hear get, bandied around in this episode are, talking about, First Amendment rights and, should talk shows be allowed to, do that to people and ambush them like that, and sort of thing, right? And so, I mean, and you wanna say no, they shouldn't be able to do that, but when you start to try to, it's like I said before, it's like when you try to start to say that, then you're starting to talk about limiting our First Amendment rights. Sometimes in the world, this is going to probably lead me to talk about Ricky a little bit, but sometimes in the world we have to be a little bit resilient and tolerate things we don't like for the greater good. And that trash TV is one of those things. I just think that the lawyers in this should have ended up focusing on taking to the higher courts whether or not an agency like Warner Brothers should be able to control and monopolize all of that content that basically allows them to profit off of the family's suffering. I think that's just absolutely abominable. So I would like to see the lawyers in this take that up, personally. So, yeah, I don't know. How many people have watched it besides Shaz? Oh, man, that's good. It's really cold, too. Oh, that's good. Okay, nobody's commenting? All right, well. So it's like I say, it's interesting stuff, folks. And if we're going to talk about things like the press conference in the Avery case, I think it's interesting. I think I should say, sorry, it's important for us to take interest in the shows like this one, where we're going to see the media playing a big part in court proceedings and court cases and things like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to analyze this and kind of come up with some of our opinions about it. You guys haven't seen it yet? All right. Well, you guys will be watching the first episode, and you'll understand some of what I'm talking about when you watch it. So, I wanted to cover this one episode at a time, just because for me, if I try to watch multiple episodes and try to report on 3 different cases at the same time in the same live, it'll get a little screwy. So that's why I went ahead and went live right away. So, explicit. Right now, we're currently waiting. We're still waiting because of COVID-19. The state has been given more and more time to file their response to Zellner's motion. So we're currently waiting for the next step in for Avery. So basically, nothing really to report other than Stephen has filed his appeal, and it's like I said, we've been waiting now for a long time. The state was stalling before COVID-19 started, and then COVID-19 came about, and now they're being given ridiculous amounts of time to stall. So that's where we're at. We're waiting. We're waiting for the next step. I see that in Netflix, The Last Kingdom or whatever. I see it, it's suggested and stuff, but I don't know. Maybe one of these days. I'm still trying to watch Outlander, so. Hopefully their time is almost. Marilyn Carter, I am glad you're here. Because, folks, you heard me talk about resilience just a few minutes ago. And, folks, if you guys go over to Ricky Kidd, his YouTube channel, it's called Ricky Kidd 23 to Free. If you go over to his channel, you should, number one, hit subscribe on his channel. He's still, I think, in the 40s on his subscribers. So if you want to go ahead and be one of his first 100 subscribers, go over there and hit subscribe. I think Ricky's going to be big as he continues. He's only been out 8 months now, but I think as he moves forward, he's going to become well known. He's going to be doing a lot of representing for wrongful convictions and that sort of stuff. And I think his channel is going to get pretty big. So I think you want to be able to claim you're one of Ricky's first 100 subscribers. So go over there and do that. But he did a video today asking people to upload clips about their resilience. So I know, Marilyn, back in the past, when I asked people to get up and do a video and tell me their story about how they got involved in Avery Dassey, I thought maybe you might be a good candidate maybe to go over and watch Ricky's video from this morning and maybe see if you can send a little video clip over to him telling a story of resilience. I'm going to be sending a clip as well. Mine is going to be talking about the resilience of what it's like to be a supporter of Brendan and how resilient I and others have to be being a supporter of Brendan, because obviously we got jerked around a lot with Brendan. He wins twice, then it's revoked, then he's snubbed by SCOTUS. And so for those of us that are supporting Brendan, we have to be very resilient, because that was a lot like a kick in the teeth to us when those of us who support Brendan. So I'm going to be uploading a video talking a little bit about that. I would like to consider everybody to go over and watch Ricky's video from this morning and consider sending over a clip to him as he's suggesting in the video. So anyways, right on, Marilyn. I love it. Thank you. So I would love to see, I would love to have some more of the MAM community showing Ricky some love, showing him some support, because I think he's going to be a pretty powerful, uh, you know, spokesman and a powerful advocate for making people aware of wrongful convictions moving forward. Dude's got a lot of energy, drive, spirit. He's I like Ricky. I like his energy. I like his attitude. I love I love the resilience movement, the whole idea of resilience. Um, I just think it's really really great. I think and so I think he deserves our support. And obviously, moving forward, we're going to be probably on my channel talking to a great many wrongfully convicted or exonerees or families of people who are wrongfully convicted who are still fighting to get their family members free. So I just want to know how those jurors can sleep at night. Well, you know, they didn't see anything wrong with it. You got to understand the mentality in the area. You know what I mean? It's even though Stephen had been exonerated, a lot of people in the area still thought he was guilty of raping Penny Burnson. You know what I mean? So they sleep just fine because they don't see anything wrong with it, I guess, is the answer to that. Okay, thanks, guys. Go check it out. If you could he's only asking for a 1-minute clip. So, and he just wants you to describe your resilience. So if you can come up with a little 1-minute, patter of, what resilience is to you, and talk about your following Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey, or whatever, maybe, I would love it if you got more than just a couple clips from people talking about Avery Dassey. I would love it. So really, thank you if you guys do it. I would really appreciate it. I will be talking to Ricky here tomorrow night, folks. So be looking for that tomorrow night. I've tweeted it. You can probably find a link for it a number of places. So it's going to be my chat with Ricky Kidd tomorrow night. And we're going to be talking about, a fair amount of things, obviously. But we're going to, I just think Ricky's a great guy. He's just, he's got a lot of energy, a lot of, drive and passion. And I can see that he tries to control that passion. He doesn't let that passion get the better of him. And I just think he's doing great work, and want to help him, I want to help him get his platform established and as best we can, if possible. So hope you guys are with me on that. Listening from Madison, Wisconsin. Hi, Kelly. So yeah, so be looking forward to that. Obviously, me talking with Ricky Kidd tomorrow night, folks. Tune in for that. It's going to be a really good chat. I just, like I said, you guys will have seen Ricky over on Tracy Strunsey's channel during Mammothon, and then also recently, it was one day last week where he was on and he was chatting with her, along with the attorney for Lamar. His buddy Lamar. I'm sorry. Oh my God, the last name is escaping me. Lamar Johnson, and it was the attorney for his friend Lamar, and they actually were in prison together. They were serving together, and they would actually support each other, help each other. They were the guys in prison that were always, in the paperwork and, looking through their casework and writing letters and doing that. And then, so they got together. So they're friends, and he's and Ricky's, still wanting to get justice for his friend Lamar. So obviously anything we can do to help him out. So if you guys go over and check out his video from this morning, if you feel inclined to send over a short clip, let Ricky Kidd hear from the MAM community and what we think about resilience and what it means to us. So, all right, folks. I can even get you guys the link to it if you want. Let's see here. All right. So for those of you after we're done here or that are interested, you can go to this link. That's the video that premiered this morning, where Ricky is asking you to send in clips to him. So if you guys are inclined, please do so. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm looking forward to maybe talking about this show again, maybe later on this week, when hopefully maybe some of you have had a bit more of a chance to sit down and watch some of it, and that way I can be talking to some people who've actually watched it and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. I think I mean I'm still thinking I like the Innocence Files is, I think, to me a little bit more powerful, but this one's interesting, to watch and see the role media plays. And in this case of this first one, the first episode, the way Warner Brothers was just making money off of all ends of this thing and profiting, immensely off of one family's grief and pain. And in two families, really. I mean, as I said, Johnny Schmitz has to be responsible for his own actions, but I think those actions were spurred and fueled by the humiliation he suffered at the hands of the Jenny Jones show. So to me, the fact that Warner Brothers continued to make money off of this situation in the long run is just absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Right on, guys. And consider sending him a clip as he suggests in the video. So I think it'd be great if he got 5 or 6 clips from MAM supporters. I know not everybody will. I know most people won't. But if you guys go over and listen to the video and you want to send him a clip, please do. I'd love for him to get a couple clips from the MAM community. I would imagine he's looking to put together some kind of little video or something. So I would love to have the MAM community represented in that, whatever he has planned for these little clips. I would love for the MAM community to be there and represented. So please, folks. Yeah, so you're welcome, Shaz. So yeah. So it's crazy stuff, man. This episode, that episode was wild. It's like I was telling you, I remember hearing about that whole Jenny Jones stuff. I do remember that, kind of hearing about that buzz back in the day, like, oh yeah, Jenny Jones, this, that, whatever. But I didn't actually know until I watched this episode all of the details of what was going down with that. And I was just like, watching this episode, I was just going, holy crud, Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, they just kept making money off it. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't be allowed. That's what the lawyers should be bringing to the higher courts on whether or not Warner Brothers should be allowed to, monopolize and profit off of, people's pain and grief. Yeah. You remember her fake crying on her show about it? I'm sure it was fake crying. I don't believe she has a conscience. I did love the way that Mr. Feiger tricked her when she was on the stand, because he was like, "You're smiling right now," and she's like, "Yeah, I believe I'm smiling." And he goes, "Why are you smiling?" And she's like, "Well, I'm just smiling." He goes, "Well, do you smile?" He goes, he basically says, "Do you smile when you're nervous?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I don't know." And he goes, "Well, because that's what Johnny Schmitz did. When he was nervous, he would smile, and that's why, because if you guys look at Johnny Schmitz during the show, he has like this huge smile the whole time, like this like painted like this rigid kind of smile or whatever. Like it looks, it's very strange, but he's like this big smile, the whole time they're on stage and stuff and everything. So he's like, and he used to smile when he felt uncomfortable. He goes, "So do you feel uncomfortable?" And like he nailed her, and like he had her there, and then he was able to start questioning her, and he was just like, but it doesn't matter because even though the jury found in favor of the families, the higher courts overruled it when Warner Brothers appealed it 3 years later, right? So yeah, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. I believe that, well, yeah, with as much money as they made off of their pain and grief, yeah, they should be obligated to give some of that back. I mean, yeah, it's disturbing what happened. It certainly is disturbing. But that's what a lot of those shows do. It's about that surprise effect and the unfolding of unscripted human emotion, right? That's what it's all about for them. That's why they're doing it. That's why trash TV gets away with it. Still do it to this day. Jamie's telling you right now. And like I said, that's the sticky thing about this episode. If we try to take away their right to do that, we start trimming back our own First Amendment rights. Right? So that's the trouble. Remember, I used the AEDPA, example. Okay, Congress tried to pass a piece of legislation that was going to take habeas away from a certain selected segment of the population. But when the Supreme Court got AEDPA, the way they interpreted it was, no, you can't have it just apply to that small part of the population. It has to apply to the entire population. So you see how that happens? Well, this First Amendment thing could be a very similar thing. To try to start limiting the First Amendment based on these trash TV shows, we would start limiting our own First Amendment rights. And it's a slippery slope. Yeah, mostly it's faded out, but you still got those ones that go during the day. I mean, Jerry Springer's bodyguard, Stephen Wilkos, now has his show. Jerry's still out there. They only come on during the day, though. Here in California they do anyway. But they come on the local channels, not really. No, I think Jerry's on Fox, but anyway. Sensationalism sells, absolutely. That's what the whole point is. I mean, that's why he did what he did to Lynn. That's why Dr. Phil did what he did to Lynn on his show. He knew that by doing that it would be good ratings. So, he was humiliating Lynn and Stephen and Stephen's family and everybody just so he can make a few dollars in ratings. Yeah. Dr. Phil's kind of a douche sometimes. What are you going to do? There's some things that he's done that I think are really good. Take the good with the bad, I guess. Dr. Phil Ugg, yeah, well. Well, I understand your feelings, Marilyn. Dr. Phil, I mean, like I said, I don't agree with everything, but sometimes he does he did a really, really good show with an unfortunate woman who had been human trafficked, and did a really, really, interesting show with that young lady. that I thought was really, really good. And it's funny because by the time I got around to watching it, already parts of it had been censored. It was interesting. I thought that was very interesting that it was being censored. Yeah, Nancy Grace. I don't like it when Nancy Grace gets on TV and starts commenting about cases, but I think Nancy Grace has a very, very good. I think what Nancy Grace is very, very good at is being a tenacious investigator. I would still question some of her ethics, but she's pretty good at it, folks. Because when she took an interest in the Chase Masner case, that was my good friend Gina was very, very much a part of and helping with. When Nancy took an interest in that case, she actually got in the trenches and was doing some investigative stuff and interviewing people and that sort of thing. And they eventually did find Chase where he was buried, and they ended up finding the guy that had buried him and all that sort of stuff, and they ended up finding justice on that. That's something that Nancy Grace can do, and she's fairly good at. And if she would stick to that sort of thing, she'd probably be okay. But when she starts getting on and commenting about cases, when I heard that they had her doing a show about wrongful convictions, I was like, that's ridiculous. That's like, I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. It's like, that's like having a dog report on the life of cats. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, Nancy. And like I said, most of the time Nancy is no good for me either. So I agree with you on that. Yeah, I know what you mean, Jamie. I mean, I'm not saying he's all bad either. He's just, but he clearly works for those ratings as well. I mean, that much is obvious. And in the case of Lynn Hartman and Stephen Avery, he's willing to do it at their expense. He's getting a leg up from by stepping on the back of a man who's already in prison. It's pretty low. It's pretty sleazy, pretty douchey. You know what I mean? And Lynn is just whoa. Lynn, yeah. I mean, it's alarming. Her story is alarming right out of the gate. She was splitting up with her husband who was in law enforcement or something of that nature, splitting up with that person and running to the arms of Stephen Avery to begin with. Okay, so that shows, in my mind, some instability. That running away from a law enforcement officer and possibly splitting up with and running into the arms of somebody who's in prison, right? So yeah, there was all that. I mean, I think she clearly was needing some help in all of this, and sure, Dr. Phil was offering, I guess, what he considered help, but only because it suited him and made him ratings. And like I said, he got those ratings by stepping on the back of a man who was already stuck in prison. You know what I mean? So it's pretty despicable. Kratz teaching a class about sexual harassment. There you go. Yeah, Lynn has issues. I honestly feel a little bit sorry for Lynn. Um, I don't like the disruption she created because of the personal issues that she was going through in her life. I don't like the damage that 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 she did in her wake. That was left in her wake. Um, I think she was selfish, and I think you know, but I also think she was I think there's some instability with her, and so I actually have some pity for Lynn Hartman. I actually don't have the AC on at the moment. I just have the fan on. But yeah. So yeah. So hopefully you folks can take a look at Trial by Media this week. Like I said, I won't be able to go live about it tomorrow. I'll be talking with Ricky Kidd tomorrow, so I hope to see you guys there. You guys go over and check out Ricky's video from this morning. I'll leave the link for you guys again here. Go check out his video. Please, if you feel inclined, just make a 1-minute video talking about resilience, being an Avery Dassey supporter. I just would really love it if you got at least 5 or 6 clips from Avery Dassey supporters, just so that we're represented in whatever it is he has in mind. I love it, folks. Please, so please do that. So, right on, Jamie. Good. And then when we do episode 2, Jamie, I'll have you on. We'll do a conference, or a live, or what's it called? We'll both be on the live and we'll talk about it. So yeah, go check out Ricky, his channel. Check out that video. Please send a video in if you feel like it. Tune in tomorrow night here on my channel. We're gonna be talking to Ricky live tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you guys there. It's going to be, should be very, very interesting. Ricky's a pretty interesting guy. So looking forward to seeing you all there. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.